Psalm 27, still, it's a long psalm. And lots of stuff in it. I've realized this about myself. I'm not doing a very good job yet of dealing well with it, but I tend to see trees and I lose sight of the forest. So I'm gonna work on a view of the forest, not just individual leaves on the individual trees, but there is a leaf on one tree here that I think is worth looking at. This is from verse 9, where David calls out to God, do not turn your back on me. Do not reject your servant in anger. You have always been my helper. Do not leave me now. Don't abandon me, O God of my salvation. And then he goes on to say, even if my father and mother abandon me, the Lord will hold me close. Now, what I want to talk about is the abandonment fear. Some people struggle mightily with the fear of abandonment. I've seen this happen a number of times in couples counseling, where one of the members of the couple is pretty deeply wounded, and their threshold for the idea or feeling of abandonment is very low. In other words, they feel the fear of abandonment quickly. And one of the things that happens in that I've observed is that partner in the couple will actually do things that promote their other partner, their mate, kind of backing away. In their fear of abandonment, they press and they press and they press, and their partner just shrinks back. That's how it works. So what do I do? Do I go to work on quit pressing? Well, you kind of have to get there, but we have to talk about, why are you feeling such passion, or not even just passion? Well, it is passion, but this it's like a compulsive need to push and push and push. The why of that is because you're afraid of abandonment. Not always, but very often. Abandonment fears come from a number of sources. Now, one of the primary ones, again, in my experience and study, is when, as a child, you experienced some form of abandonment. I have to go to I'm sorry, this is less about the scripture and more about some of my ideas today, but I'm going to share them. I call it my primary working theory, is that from the time before we're born, once our brain has developed, and it begins developing very early, and in our pre-birth, our brain is very active. It's doing all kinds of things, and one of the things that it's doing, and it continues to do throughout our entire life, is it is connecting or attaching meaning to sensations in the pre-birth period. Research has indicated to us that infants in the womb hear sound. They, in a disturbing way, a sad way, a heartbreaking way for me. There's video of babies, preborn babies being aborted where they are screaming out in pain. It's horrible. I saw this first when I was in my 30s, and it rocked me. The title of the film was Silent Scream. Anyway, once we're born, this connecting meaning with sensation, sounds, touches, light. It takes a while before a baby can actually focus, and then the sight of things. The brain is constantly connecting meaning. Okay, I think I've made my point, but here's the deal. When our brain makes a connection, especially when we're young, it treats that connection as though it was the absolute truth. For instance, mom and dad go out for a date. The 3-year-old is at home with a babysitter. And the 3-year-old, it's bedtime and mommy and daddy aren't back. And there's this part of a 3-year-old brain that kind of, one of the things it does in this situation, the meaning of mom and daddy aren't back is that they're not coming back. They won't be back. The babysitter tells the 3-year-old, it's okay, let me sing to you a little bit, and then let's say your prayers, and you can go to sleep. And mommy and daddy will be back. But the baby, this 3-year-old, it's not a baby, but this little kid, they have attached a meaning to this event. I am abandoned. It's not how they think of it, but as an adult, we reflect on it and see they are experiencing feelings of abandonment. Were they abandoned? Well, no. Okay, that feeling will persist. And I know of children who go through this stage of separation anxiety because their fear is that they'll be abandoned. They don't have words to describe it. Okay, what in the world's that got to do with Psalm 27? Well, David writes, don't leave me now. Don't abandon me. Any thinking person will occasionally, if not often, have this sense of aloneness. Not solitude, but aloneness, abandonment. Okay. Now, if you have abandonment issues, what I've been talking about is going to sound pretty familiar to you, even as an adult. But if you don't have abandonment issues, well, this is kind of like, well, you kind of get over it and move on. Boy, do I wish it was a thing that I could just go, here you go home, do this, get over it, and move on. Haven't found that thing. Was David locked up with the fear of abandonment? I don't see him frozen by it. But I do see, how do you not see it here? That is a thing that he doesn't want. There's some level of fear of abandonment there. Oh God of my salvation, even if my father and mother abandon me. Imagine now in a Hebrew culture to be abandoned by your father and mother. Well, that just didn't happen. First of all, the Judaic law prohibited it. Society prohibited it. It didn't frown on it. It prohibited it. David was using an example that was so unlikely to happen. It's hyperbole, exaggeration for the sake of effect. Even if my father and mother abandon me, and the reasonable response to that is, that's not gonna happen. Then he goes on, the Lord will hold me close. Feeling this in our emotions, knowing it in our intellectual mind, is the key to the fear of abandonment. To know that the Lord will hold me close. It's an interesting word picture. If you've gone through the 5 love languages, you know that one of the love languages is physical touch. And this is one of my primaries, if a physical touch person gets held close, they feel loved. Now, a couple of my daughters are not so much on the physical touch thing, and when I try to give them physical touches, they endure it, and they're in their 40s. So it's not everybody, but some people, and I have a feeling David was one of those people. This being held close communicated love. And even if your love language isn't physical touch, in a symbolic sense, because let's be realistic, I have never experienced where I had a physical hug from God. The hugs I've experienced have only happened from other people, maybe prompted by God, but you know what I'm saying. So we're looking at this and thinking, okay, how can I make the most of a symbolic hug from God? How does that happen? Where can I put myself where it's more likely to happen? Those are good questions, legitimate questions. So today, the homework I want to pass on is, when was the last time that you felt this thing of God holding you close? For some of us, it was, we were in nature, and we saw the wonder and the beauty, and it just felt like a hug from God. For some, it was art, music, painting, sculpture, architecture. For others, was literature. To me, one of the great sources of this hug from God is Scripture itself. Not the only, but it's a great source. I especially love, I've told you this before, I especially love the Psalms. Now, not all Psalms are a hug from God. Some are songs of distress and anger. And yet, even in Psalm 27, you see both David's distress and his sensing God's hug. Even if my father and mother abandon me, the Lord will hold me close. He knows this intellectually. Maybe what he's calling for is an emotional connection with what he knows in his mind. Maybe that's what you and I need today. Call out to God like David did. Well, okay, that's enough for today. See you next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.